Hello, my name is Dr. Wyatt Cox. In this PowerPoint video, I'm going to be talking about what I believe is one of our very most important topics that's going on right now in our society, and that is the topic of creationism versus atheism. In other words, is God real? Did God create this universe? And if he did, then God created the universe and what is in the universe for a divine purpose, and thus it has value and meaning and significance. But if the atheists are correct, the universe exists by chance. There's no purpose for it. There's no significance. In fact, they will use the word purposeless or purposelessness to describe this universe and all that lives in it. So this is a very important topic because our sense of morality is defined by this. Uh, and really, what does the evidence say as well? There's so much writing on this issue that affects us in profound ways. And I really believe we need to get our hands wrapped around this, our minds wrapped around this. We need to understand and grasp what this reality is. And I believe the reality is God is real and God created this universe for divine purposes. And I believe as a Christian, it's easy to show where the Bible supports this view, but also looking at the evidence itself, physical evidence, clearly, to me, is clear that it supports the view that God is real and God is our creator. So we're going to be looking at this topic for the next few minutes, and we're going to be looking at a lot of evidence. We're going to be looking at a few Bible verses as well. And we're going to be talking about why it makes the best sense in so many ways to reject atheism and to embrace the idea and view that God is real and is the creator of this universe. I'll be glad to hear from you. My website is wyattcox.com, and you can reach me at wyattcox@gmx.com. So I'll be glad to get an email from you. Uh, We'll get started with this. Creationism means God is real. Atheism means God is a fairy tale. And one of these statements is true and the other is false. And it's mutually exclusive. Truth is exclusive. If you accept one view, you reject the other. One is true, one is false. And truth always matters. Truth is important. So I'll start with a scripture or two here. All scripture is given by inspiration of God and is profitable for doctrine and reproof, for correction and instruction in righteousness. 2 Timothy 3:16. So we can go to the Bible with confidence and find Isaiah chapter 1. We read, "We're coming now, let us reason together." In other words, use your mind, engage your mind into thinking and talking and trying to understand and grasp these things. Paul reasoned or defended the truth with the Jews, Acts chapter 17 and Acts chapter 18. In 1 Peter 3:15, we're to be ready to give an answer. When people ask about the hope that is within you, why you believe God is real, why you believe you have divine purpose and significance, be able to articulate that, talk about that, engage other people's minds in this. And one of the things I find here, and it's very important, and I hear so many people say, I know what I believe, I just have trouble talking to other people about it, articulating that to other people. And this is very important, to not only have the right beliefs, but can you share those with other people? So the question is, we'll get back to the topic here in a more direct way, can the physical universe exist and have no purpose? This is atheism. And this is what they teach in schools and in colleges, that the physical universe exists. It just simply doesn't have a purpose. And that is a false statement for a number of reasons, and we're going to look at that. The basic Christian view on creationism, obviously, is the opposite of that. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. Evidence clearly shows the physical universe had a designer, and it actually the physical universe demonstrates this as an expression of consciousness. It's obvious to me that when you look at the physical universe from your yard or whatever, this is an expression of consciousness, this physical creation. And the universe was created and thus, by its very nature, has a purpose for its existence. Psalm chapter 8 says, when I consider thy heavens, the work of thy fingers, the moon and the stars which thou hast ordained. What is man that thou art mindful of him, and the son of man that thou visited him? For thou hast made him a little lower than the angels. But God is being given credit for the creation of the universe. Jeremiah chapter 9. Thou, even thou art Lord alone. Thou hast made heaven, the heaven of heavens, with all their hosts, the earth, and all the things that are therein. So, believing the God of the Bible exists is, in my view, the best way to explain why there is a physical universe. It's the best way to explain why laws of logic exist. I mean, if you're an atheist, when did laws of logic exist? What happened? Were there no laws of logic before the Big Bang? They have no answer for this. It's the best way to explain the fine-tuning of the universe. In other words, at the subatomic particles, when you get into the physics of this, the interaction of the electrical and magnetic field, the gravitational field, if these laws that governed these physical phenomena were just slightly different, this fine-tuning didn't exist as it does today, there'd be no way the universe could exist in a way that would support any kind of complex life. Believing the God of the Bible is also the best way to explain why objective morality exists. In other words, some things are really wrong, some things are really right. But it's not because we say they are. In other words, morality didn't originate in the mind of people, but morality actually exists and originates from the mind of God. The best way to explain our final destiny. Our physical bodies one day will not function. We're a spiritual being in a physical body, and this belief in biblical creation or Christian creationism is the best way to explain our final destiny as human beings. So we'll get to basic atheism again. There is no reality except what is natural. In other words, there's nothing outside the natural realm. There's nothing. All that exists is natural. You can't transcend or go outside of natural. So there is no spiritual realm or anything like that. The universe exists but has no purpose. And then they'll say things like about 3.4 billion years ago, somehow non-life produced life, some kind of primordial soup. Humans evolved from lesser advanced ape-like animals, and there's no valid reason to believe God exists. So this is what we've got. Atheist claims that time plus energy plus chance really equals everything. Everything. Human beings, if you're alive today, atheists say, well, you're only here because of time, energy, and chance. And it's absurd, I believe, to promote these views. So 4 fundamental questions we have to ask ourselves, and philosophers have done this for many, many years. How did we get here, origin? Why am I here? How to know the best way to live? And what is my destiny? If we get question number 1 wrong, we answer all the other questions wrong. So you have to get this question right. What is their origin? So what caused the physical universe to exist? Now what exists in the physical realm, including the physical realm, has a reason for its existence. It has a cause. Something caused it. The physical reality of the physical universe is not uncaused. It is caused. We need to look at that. So the physical universe can exist for one of 3 reasons. There's only 3 possibilities that can be used to explain how or why our universe exists. One is out of necessity. In other words, the universe cannot not exist. That means out of necessity. It has to exist. Well, people, atheists and creationists and other groups will tell you that the universe doesn't have to exist. They rule that out. So this number 1 here is basically not considered by any scientist or anything like that. By chance, atheists say, well, by chance it happened. The odds are so phenomenally absurd, phenomenally astronomically, it's just like, trillions to one, and that kind of, the odds, the mathematics are totally working against the atheists who are trying to grasp some kind of answer and say, well, it's by chance, it just happened, or the physical universe was created. Number one, out of necessity, is just simply there's no evidence to support this. There's no sound philosophical arguments used for this. There's just simply no way to defend out of necessity. Two, by chance, again, it's just phenomenally difficult to support such a view. There's no evidence for this. And atheism, by its nature, is not trying to explain a lot of these details. The atheism is basically saying we take a position, there's simply no God, rather than really trying to give answers to these difficult and challenging questions. Creationism makes the best sense. So, atheism is not something that's harmless. It's not a harmless belief. Well, you believe you're an advanced monkey and that's funny. No, it's really a serious issue because our morality as human beings, or how do we justify that if we're just advanced monkeys? How do we know right and wrong? We don't go to the animal world and say, oh, this was right or this was wrong. We have objective morality for humans. But where did that come from? So atheism is a very serious and very deceptive viewpoint, I believe. It's almost really a religious belief system. It is a faith-based system because they don't have evidence to support their view. There's no proof. So to me, it is an evidence-based belief, or a faith, not evidence-based. The evidence is for the creationists. It is a faith-based system for the atheists, but they don't have evidence to support their claims. They've just got this belief. We got an agenda. We've just got to tell people there's no God. So creationism basically says we're made in the image of God and that human morality came from God. Atheism, we're of the best apes. False statements made by atheists. Christians don't accept science. Real scientists reject the idea God is real. And evolution is not a theory. These are false statements. Christians don't accept science. Look, you can do a quick Google search and find Christians who are scientists, and the list just goes on and on and on. Christians, by and large, love science, accept science, embrace it. Some of the best scientists and engineers our world has ever produced are Christians. Do any kind of basic search. This is an absurd statement. I mean, you can have an entire video lecture just on this one point here. It's that absurd. Christians do accept and embrace science. And point two is kind of runs with this. Real scientists reject the idea of God is real. No, that's true. This is a horrible statement. This is a false statement. It's real that they say this stuff, but it's a false statement. There are so many credentialed PhD scientists that outright reject atheism. They outright reject it. Real scientists do accept the idea that God is real. But atheists want you to believe otherwise. And it's simply a false statement. They want to say evolution is not a theory. Well, they want to say it's a fact, not a theory. I would probably say it's not a theory either. It's merely a hypothesis, but there's not enough evidence to suggest it's a theory. A theory means you can test it, you can observe it and things like that. Stellar evolution. How did stars evolve? From dust particles and that kind of thing. That's a theory by the atheist standards, but there's no evidence or proof or observations of it. Planetary evolution. How did dust particles collect to each other and turn into rocks, and the rocks collected and made bigger rocks, and then a planet evolved? Or biological evolution. How did non-life produce life? They want to say it's not a theory, it's a fact, but it's not a theory. It's not even rated high enough to be a theory. There's not enough evidence available to make these kinds of statements a theory. It's absurd. Stephen Hawking, considered to be a great scientist and great thinker, a few years ago President Obama gave this man, he's sitting here in the wheelchair, an award, the highest award a president can give a civilian. It was for his scientific achievements. And the guy apparently had a brilliant mind in some ways. And the award he was given for his scientific achievements, here's one of the things Stephen Hawking has said, his own words, that we're just an advanced breed of monkeys on a minor planet of a very large star, but we can understand the universe. That makes us something very special. I don't know how you can say it's very special when we're an advanced breed of monkey, and if it is a special monkey, how absurd is this? He wants our children told, you're a special kind of monkey. I mean, really, this is what he's saying. Richard Dawkins is a popular atheist now. He writes books, goes on tours, does debates and stuff like that. And he says it's absolutely safe to say, if you meet somebody who claims not to believe in evolution, and he's referring to atheistic evolution, that person is ignorant, stupid, or insane. He goes on to say, when people have asked him questions, I've heard him in some of the lectures and debates. He says people ask him, why does the universe exist? What is the meaning of life? And his answers always, those are, quote unquote, his words, silly questions. How can they be silly questions? These are the value questions. When you ask why the value question? No matter what it is. I mean, if you told me you went into town today to buy some things, I'd go, well, why do you need these things? The why question is valuable. If you say, well, I went to the doctor today. Well, why? Why is always important. And he wants to say they're silly questions. It's simply absurd. Bill Nye, who claims to be the science guy, in fact, he's not a scientist, he's an engineer. Creationism in the U.S. is an embarrassment and a shame. A religious superstition that does real harm to children. Creationism is a symptom of a willful ignorance and an anti-intellectualism that thwarts scientific progress at home and humiliates the U.S. abroad. Bill Nye. Again, go do a Google search, a basic, simple Google search about Christians who are scientists and the contributions they made to this world in scientific accomplishments. It'll amaze you. You'll be simply just blown away. This is a false statement, and I really believe Bill Nye has to know what he's saying is a false statement. The fool has said in his heart, there is no God. They are corrupt. They have done abominable works. There is none that does good. Let's get back to the atheists and some of their problems. How non-existence produced existence. Atheists can't explain this. How they've not been able to explain how non-existence produced existence. They want to say, and they say this, before the Big Bang there was nothing. That's their word, nothing. How did non-existence produce existence? They can't explain that. How did non-intelligence produce intelligence? They cannot explain that one. How did non-life produce life? There's chemicals and water, and maybe some lightning struck the water and the chemicals, or a volcano, but how did that produce life? How non-information produced information. And you might want to think about this. I don't mean something you know is information, but that could be part of it. But the information contained, say, in an atom, in an electron, in a photon, the subatomic particles, there's tons and tons of information in there, massive amounts of information. So what happened before the Big Bang? Did information exist? If not, then how did non-information create information? How did non-consciousness produce consciousness? Don't know. And why are mathematics always consistent? This is a dilemma mathematicians have argued about, philosophers too. Before the Big Bang, were there what we call mathematics? Would calculus exist? Algebra exist? And yet the laws of mathematics are always consistent. And how did that come into being? Atheists cannot explain that. And why does logic always yield predictable results? Before the Big Bang, was there logic? No. Not according to atheists, though. How did logic come into existence? And that it always offers predictable results. They can't explain that. We'll look at science here for a moment. Science just basically means a body of knowledge. It means it comes from the word scientia. The Latin word scientia means body of knowledge. So that's what science is. But science and can help us to understand physical phenomena. Tremendous. Not only understanding it, but how to maybe use it in a way that's hopefully beneficial to us. Science can help us to produce helpful technology. The MRI machine, computers, and other things, hopefully they're going to assist us. Science can help us to have a safer environment. Well, science can do a lot of good. We use science for things. And, Bible-believing Christians embrace science, as I mentioned. Here's a book called In 6 Days, Why 50 Scientists, these are PhD guys, choose to believe in creation. These are 50 PhD scientists have articles in this book why they believe in the biblical narrative of creation. There's other books out similar to this, but this one here it does typify that many credentialed scientists reject atheism and accept what the Bible teaches. There's some things science cannot do, and we put science on a pedestal almost, or the atheists do. And it's like our Savior, that's our Redeemer almost. Science, we need more science. Well, science cannot answer metaphysical questions like why is truth important? What is morality? These are kinds of questions science cannot delve into and answer. They're not scientific questions. Some questions and some endeavors are not scientific by nature. They're metaphysical. They're outside of the physical realm in this regard. It cannot make aesthetic judgments. Science can't tell you if something is beautiful or not. Science cannot tell you how to use science. There is no way for science to tell you how to use science. You have to figure that out, and hopefully in a good way, but don't have to be. Science can't tell you that. Science can tell you a lot of times how, but not why. Again, why is where the value is. And it cannot prove logic to be true. That's kind of a strange statement, but science cannot actually tell you that logic has to be true. And they can go on with these kinds of things about what science cannot do, and it is really difficult for the atheists. They simply don't want to address these issues when you talk about science and about atheism, because they simply don't have an answer for this. There's nothing unscientific or anti-science to state the truth. If God is responsible for the universe, it's a true statement, then you say it, but that's not anti-science, it's not anti-intellectual. Stating the truth is not anti-science. But science versus scientists. Scientists are people. Science is not. Science, people will tell you, say, well, science tells us. No, science doesn't tell you. Science can't tell you anything. Science is an abstract. It's a body of knowledge. Knowledge, it's abstract, like the number 6 or whatever. The number 6 is abstract. It can't do anything on its own. It's abstract. You can use the number 6 expression and do things with it, but the knowledge itself can't tell you anything. So it's totally the knowledge itself is it exists only in an abstract expression or manifestation. Only people can tell you, or their technology they build, like computers. Only people can tell you what is believed that science has revealed. Only people tell you that. People with biases, people with limited knowledge, people with an agenda. Only people can tell you. Science doesn't tell you. And only people can produce theories or locate facts and offer explanations. Science doesn't do that. Science doesn't locate facts or produce theories or offer explanations. Science, again, is abstract. So science versus scientists, we need to know what we're really talking about. And really we're talking about worldviews in conflict for Christians and atheists. There's the Darwin worldview, where there is no God, and there is the Christian worldview, where there is God. And the evidence we look at is the same. Atheists have the same evidence creationists have, and vice versa. The evidence is all there, and both sides use it. So the point is, what is the worldview you're using? What is the lenses you're looking at, using to look at this evidence? It is this worldview that makes the difference. And the two worldviews is obviously humanity has a creator, thus a purpose, or humanity has no purpose. If you don't have a purpose, then why is it valuable to understand these things? Really, if your life has no purpose or value, what's the significance in even understanding if what you believe is true or not? I mean, you don't exist for a purpose, right? So what's the point? You see how absurd this is if you're an atheist. In the beginning, creationists and atheists both claim the physical universe had a beginning. There's no debate on that. So when did the physical universe begin? How old really is this universe? Is it billions and billions and billions years old? Or is it a lot younger than that, far younger than that? And I believe the Bible offers a lot of clarity on this topic, and that is the universe is not billions and billions of years old. Atheists basically say about 14, 15 billion years ago, depending on who you ask, a big bang or some kind of explosion, whatever that means, occurred. But the Bible says in the beginning, God created, and that's in Genesis 1, verse 1. Now, was there a big bang? Something exploded? Nothingness, or out of nothing exploded into something? Well, let's look at it this way. If you look to the left on this slide, the Big Bang, say 14 billion years ago or so. We don't know what the Big Bang, we don't know what caused the Big Bang, atheists say. We're not sure, the atheists say. Maybe something got hot, a gravitational wave vibrated, something happened, and then there was this Big Bang. We don't know what the something is, they'll say. They're not sure. So let's designate this uncertain phenomenon, this unknown phenomenon that caused the Big Bang. We'll designate that and represent that with the letter A. But what caused A? Well, they don't know. Something did, but we don't know. So let's just say this phenomenon that caused A, which we don't know what it is, let's say we'll represent as B. B caused A to exist. A produced the Big Bang. Well, what produced B or caused B to exist? We don't know, the atheists say. We'll say C did. Then we go D did, and you go all the way through the alphabet. So Z did something, Y, and you go on up the alphabet till you get to D, C, B, A, then you got the Big Bang. In other words, you have to keep going back as an atheist to what's called an uncaused phenomenon, something that is uncaused. And they do not like that. They do not want to go there because they have to, if they're honest, acknowledge there's something in existence outside the physical world, because what caused the physical world was not itself. The physical world didn't create itself. Something transcendent of that, outside of that, did. And they do not want to go there and acknowledge what they have to acknowledge. There was an uncaused phenomenon. But if there was a Big Bang, if there was like a stick of dynamite that blew up, I mean, something lit the fuse, and they do not know what that is. Now, for Christians, it's not a difficult question. The answer is quite simple. The unknown, or uncaused, rather, I guess it's unknown to the atheist, the uncaused phenomenon, and God is uncaused by our human knowledge and understanding. God is uncaused. God does necessarily exist. In other words, God cannot not exist. The uncaused phenomenon exists necessarily, where the physical stuff, the physical universe, is contingent. It doesn't have to exist. So the uncaused phenomenon, or we would say God, is the creator of the universe. So there is this first cause, and atheists really are uncomfortable with this thought. But does an explosion without intelligence involved create time? And how? Atheists don't know. How about creating space itself? They don't know. Or physical law, information, mathematics, all that stuff. Atheists do not know. And how could an explosion produce order out of chaos and produce complex phenomena from purposeless existence? It's just simply nonsensical for what the atheists are promoting in our schools. So the theory of atheistic evolution, they talk about the evolution of the universe. When the Big Bang occurred, billions of years happened, things evolved. The solar systems evolved, the planets evolved, the evolution of life, and the evolution of non-consciousness producing consciousness. And if you accept the idea they're theories, I don't, and for a number of reasons. And I think it's appropriate to say they're not even a theory. There's not enough evidence in their favor to say this is a theory. A theory should be observable. Well, they can't observe stellar evolution, non-consciousness producing consciousness, or evolving into that. All that they can't test it, and they can't duplicate it. So by definition, it's not a theory; it's a hypothesis. But there's no evidence to support the hypothesis and upgrade all of that to a theory. It's just not there. So atheists want to say about 3.5 billion years ago, the Earth's surface was hot, had pockets of water, chemicals in it, lightning strikes, volcanoes, and then something happened. There was some primordial soup that occurred, and out of that primordial soup, we had life. The single cells developed, and then over billions of years, the cells became more complex. And billions of years later, here we are, the guy in the center of this PowerPoint reading a biology book. And from purposelessness, the atheists claim now we have people like Albert Einstein and Mozart, Plato, out of this primordial soup, and it is simply absurd. So young or old, the billion-year folks really have serious issues, and let's look at these serious issues, because they very much are. If the Earth is not billions of years old, then there's evidence for it. That's right. If the Earth is young, there's evidence. If the galaxy is young, there's evidence. So let's look at these points here. What about the Earth-Moon relationship? This is a good one if you want to refute atheists' basic claim about the universe being very, very old. And what about the Earth-Sun relationship? What about dinosaurs? Did they live 65 million years ago, 100 million years ago? Or did they live in more modern times? And what about that account of Noah and the flood, the universal deluge? Well, let's look at the Earth and the Moon first. The Moon recedes or goes farther away from the Earth about 3 inches a year. So it's going farther away. And this is natural to do that. Well, if you go back, say, a million years ago, a million years in time, the Moon was a little bit closer. If you go back 10 million years, the Moon was closer. If you go back 1 billion years, the Moon is a lot closer. And if you go back when life supposedly came into existence on Earth, say 3.5 billion years ago, the Moon would basically be causing havoc on the Earth. I mean, you just can't get the Moon but so close to the Earth without the gravitational problems of the planet and the Moon. And then the Moon would actually collide with the Earth. You simply can't go back in time that far and have an Earth-Moon relationship. It simply cannot exist when you go back that far in time. So the atheists have a big problem with this question. Another one they have is the relationship the Earth has with the Sun. Sun, it burns energy. It's burning its hydrogen off. And there's a more complex phenomena, but it's burning fuel, producing light and heat, that kind of thing. And as the star gets older, it burns its rate of fuel faster. And as the sun gets older, it becomes slightly smaller because it's burning out fuel. Well, if you go back, say, 3.5 billion years ago, when atheists say life first appeared, the problem is the sun is too cool at that time. It gets cooler. Younger stars are cooler than older stars because of the rate of burning the fuel. So 3.5 billion years ago, the sun would have been producing about 25% less heat. And the Earth would simply have been too cold. I mean, this is a huge problem for the atheists. They do not know how to address this. But the reality is, 3.5 billion years ago, the Earth was a very, very cold place to be on. So how did life come out of this primordial soup and not only thrive, but evolve into complex phenomena. Atheists simply have no answer for that. And the spiraling galaxies. The spiraling and getting tighter and tighter. The spiraling galaxies, they cannot be spiraling for billions of years. It simply would be a violation of the laws of physics. The spiraling has been taking place only for a relatively short time. If you do the math, you can't exceed more than like 12 or 15,000 years for the spiraling rate that these galaxies are spiraling at. So atheists have this massive problem with this type of phenomenon. And here on Earth, right off the coast of Iceland, Surtsey Island, in the 1960s, the volcano erupted out in the ocean there near Iceland. The volcano reached the top of the water at the ocean, and it made an island. It took about 3 years for this whole process before the volcano went dormant, and then the volcano went dormant, and there was this island. A geologist from Iceland studied this new island for 5 years and then wrote his report to the government. And in his report, he talks about this island, which started off with about a square mile in size. It developed a sandy beach. Big rocks became smaller through erosion, wave action and rain, that kind of thing. And there were erosion marks on the island, some vegetation, some birds started coming. Lots of things were happening to the island within 5 years. And he had in his report, and you can probably go online and find a copy of it, he had in his report that if he had not known anything about this island, nothing, and he was in a boat and he came up on this island for the first time and knew nothing about it, and he had to guess or estimate the age of the island, he said in his report, I would have estimated around 12,000 years old. But he knew the island was only 5 years old. So atheists are biased, and he even admitted, this geologist, that his training in school had been seriously flawed because he could not know the difference between a 5-year-old island and a 12,000-year-old island. The big problem with atheists. Now, similar to this mountain here in Mexico, in the 1940s, a volcano erupted and produced this giant hill in a matter of about 2 years. But someone just stumbling upon this and looking at this would assume it's been there for a long, long time because the vegetation is on it, the size of this thing, and all of that. But it took less than 3 years for a cornfield, literally a cornfield, to turn into a giant hill. So things happen on Earth and in the universe very quickly, and scientists that are atheists grossly misjudge the time on this and add these thousands and millions of years, and it's simply just not true. I remember when, a few years ago, several years ago now I guess, when atheists said that the creationists was obviously wrong because they couldn't find viable dinosaur tissue. Atheists would say, if you creationists are right and dinosaurs died out with Noah, there should be some viable dinosaur tissue found. But then they would say dinosaur tissue cannot exist for millions of years. And they said the last dinosaurs died out millions of years ago. Well, in 2005 and then after that in different cases, soft tissue in dinosaurs had been located. And then literally overnight, the atheists said, well, yeah, dinosaur tissue can exist for millions of years, 60, 70, 80 million years, no problem. But prior to that, they said this is the absolute proof that the creationists are wrong because they do not have soft dinosaur tissue. Now we do. So this is why atheists have these massive problems with their, and it's not really based on science to hold their beliefs. Atheists hold their beliefs because they simply don't want God to exist. So in the beginning, God created. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea and all that is in them, and rested on the Sabbath day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy. The Bible is very clear on all of this, on the days of creation, 6 days. You can read that in the book of Genesis, chapter 1 and 2. I recommend that. And the word day in Genesis is the same Hebrew word for day used in the other passages in the Old Testament. Only in Genesis chapter 1 is there a disagreement on how this word day should be used. Should day be used as in millions of years, billions of years, or should it be used in the same way that the word day is used elsewhere? In fact, day is used about 2,300 times in the Old Testament. There's no controversy about the usage except when you come to the book of Genesis. Um, God said, let us make man in our image, according to our likeness, and let them rule over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the sky, and over the cattle, and all over the earth, and every creeping thing that creeps on the earth. God created man in his own image, and in the image of God he created him. Male and female, he created them. So on the sixth day of the creation, the last day, God created. The Bible's clear on these points. Now, the atheists come back, and it's a fair question. What happened to the dinosaurs? Doesn't that prove the Earth is old? Dinosaurs died out 65 million years ago. Isn't there proof of that? And the answer is no. There's really not. If it is proof there were dinosaurs, there's not proof that they died out 65 million years ago. So where is the proof we got? Well, they all did die, but according to the Bible, there was a universal flood, and every animal a land animal that was not in the ark did die in the flood, and that would include most of the animals we would call dinosaurs. So dinosaurs lived. They were real. Some were large. Most were not. Most dinosaurs were very small animals. In Hollywood movies, they're big, but in reality, there were some big ones, but most of them were not. But so what happened to the dinosaurs? And that's the question. So something happened to them. And I mentioned they died in the flood. But is that really true? What about today? Do dinosaurs live today or in modern times? Well, atheists say no, but a dinosaur, the word means terrible lizard. And this picture here is a crocodile. And this is an actual crocodile. They grow up to like 20 feet long. They're massive, and they're occasionally killed this size that you see in this slide here. So that's a dinosaur by our definition. So was there a global flood? That's the question. I said that there was a global flood, but is that really true? And yes, the Bible talks about that. I suggest you read the book of Genesis, chapters 6 through 10. To get a much better idea of that, and that's a topic unto itself. Genesis chapter 6 through 10. God had Noah build an ark, a huge wooden structure, a boat, large enough to handle the animals, some people, supplies, and that kind of thing to survive the universal flood. Animals God brought into the ark, the Bible said that would include the dinosaurs, include elephants, include everything else. Whatever animals there were, they were brought into the ark. And then the flood came. And then when the flood came, it was universal. And the waters prevailed so mightily upon the earth that all the high mountains under the whole heaven were covered, and waters prevailed above the mountains, covering them 15 cubits deep. Genesis chapter 7. Now, in Luke 17, this is the New Testament now, not the Old. We see, as it was in the days of Noah, an historical figure, so will it be in the days of the Son of Man. That's referring to Jesus. They ate, they drank, they married, they were given in marriage until the day when Noah entered the ark, and the flood came and destroyed them all. The flood occurred. Again, another topic, but there's plenty of evidence of a universal flood about 4,500 years ago. So that would mean if dinosaurs existed back then, in the days of Noah, should there be something in the Bible about dinosaurs? And in fact, there is. Job 40 says, look at the behemoth. And he describes the behemoth, how big he is, how his tail moves like a cedar, and he's not describing an elephant or a hippo or a rhinoceros. He's actually describing something quite different than that. He's describing like a brontosaurus with this. So it's simply the Bible does have things to say about dinosaurs and flying serpents, fiery flying serpents, and dragons and things like that. The Bible talks about with specifics about these things. And a fiery serpent here, it's a fiery flying serpent, and Did they really exist? These flying serpents? Yeah, sure they did. Here's an ancient carving here, or sketch here. It's carved out here back in ancient days of a flying serpent. It's almost like a snake-like, reptile-like animal, but it could fly as well. And its stings or bite was venomous. It was fiery. Um, Here's a mural, a painting about 13 feet by 14 feet in size. It's an ancient artwork made probably a few years before Jesus was born in Bethlehem. Probably 40 or 50 years before that time. Very ancient. It had been covered in ruins and sand, and it was unknown until recent times. And it was rediscovered, and it was in excellent condition. And it's this whoever created this was showing things that were going on about 50 BC in the area he lived on along the Nile River. And you can see people and buildings and things. But if you look about to the center of this painting, on the right side, I want to zero in on a part of that. And you see here three people after a dragon or a dinosaur. And this painting here, this artwork, was made about 50 BC. How would they have known this? They didn't have the fossils or the bones. They couldn't have used their imagination. And the other parts of the artwork is showing real stuff, real people doing real things that would be normal. And here they're showing some people actually battling these dragons and dinosaurs. So yeah, they lived back in that time period. And Isaiah said, in that day, the Lord with his soaring great and strong sword shall punish Leviathan, that's a monster there, a dinosaur, that crooked serpent, and he shall slay the dragon that is in the sea. Chapter 27. So dragons and all that are mentioned in the Bible. Here is a temple, an old temple in Cambodia. And the arrow is pointing toward, you go around and go into an entrance on this place of ancient worship here, this temple. And as you go around to go to the doorway, passageway to enter, you'll see here on the left a row of animals, look like depictions. If you look at the bottom, you'll see an animal, and then the second one here. But the third one from the bottom, I want you to look at this one very closely. Third one from the bottom, what is that? That's a stegosaurus. And how would they have known about stegosaurus all this time ago? Unless they either had skeletons of one or they actually saw one. There's no evidence they had skeletons and fossils of a stegosaurus in this area. They actually, somebody had to have known about this animal to put it in along with these others. Here is a church in England, a very, very old church, built in the around 1500, I believe, late 1400s. And it's the Carlisle Cathedral. And here you can see where some of the bishops that would die, they would bury them in this huge building. And Bishop Richard Bell died here in 1496. So many, many years later, the building was renovated. Everything was kind of stripped out and removed, and the building was renovated. Well, when they pull everything out and they get to the basic bare floor, you find something very interesting, some brass plates into the floor, and there were engravings. If you look at the engravings, you'll see they were dinosaurs. Now, this was before they had the skeletons and stuff like that. They didn't know. How would they have known? There were no books about dinosaurs, and they didn't have the fossils. They had actual memory of or actual sightings of these kind of animals in the region. And this is actually engraved in about 1490s of these animals. And it's really, really clear. There's so much stuff you could put in here. I put in a few. There's so many more. So I want to conclude with this. And I think I've tried to make some valid points. Atheism is a false system. It's a belief system, but it's totally false. It is deceptive. They don't try to answer the real basic questions. And atheism rejects evidence. This is not science when you reject evidence. You follow the evidence. Science If you really embrace science, you're going to follow the evidence, and you're going to go wherever the evidence leads. And I believe the evidence shows there is a designer, and the Bible clearly demonstrates that God is real, and that the physical evidence demonstrates the universe has a designer and it has a purpose, and that even rational thought and logic, I believe, you reach the conclusion there was a creator. So, if God is real, we know the universe was created. We know our moral values originate from God. We know that we have a purpose, a plan. But if God is not real, there is no purpose for humanity. Morality is just whatever you say it is. And that there is no ultimate fate for you except death or annihilation. And the universe itself is going to die one day. The stars will burn up their fuel. The energy will go back to being in a chaotic state. And the universe will become cold and dead. And for atheism, this is the fate of the universe. But I believe this, as I conclude. God did make the universe with a purpose. So it means we have a purpose, we have a destiny. I believe that God is accessible and knowable. And God wants all of us to willingly seek Him. We, as God's special creation, by and large, people have rejected Him. And that's a shame. That's a tragedy. But God has provided us a way so we can enter into that relationship freely and willingly, the relationship He wants. And for Christians, we know this to be a true thing. Another topic can do itself too, that Jesus Christ did come to earth, and Jesus Christ is God's Son, and that God provided Jesus as our means and our way, the way to enter into that relationship with God. So God does grant salvation to those who repent of their sins, of their rejection, of their rebellion of God, and accepts Christ as their Savior. This is God's purpose and plan for this world. It is for humans to willingly get back right with their Creator and to have that right relationship with their Creator. Atheism rejects that, attempts to destroy that, and there's simply atheism is a belief system, and it really is hostile to Christianity. And I believe the evidence strongly rejects. You should reject atheism, but the evidence is clearly in favor of Christianity, not only from the Bible, but physical evidence, sound philosophical reasoning. All of this points to us having a purpose. We have a God, and God has a plan for us. And I thank you for listening to this video. I will have some more uploaded shortly. And I will be touching again on some of these topics more specifically. And thank you very much. Be glad to hear from you at wyattcox@gmx.com. Be glad to get an email from you. Be glad to come to your church and speak, or your group. Just let me know, and I'll see what I can do to work that out. Thank you very much.